Welcome back to Dirty 20, everyone. Today we take a step-by-step walk through combat in 5e. And make sure you are ready for your first fight. Let's get on with the show. Thanks for joining us, lovely people. Continuing on from our video last week where we talked about your very first session and the basics of what you need to do to just start playing. I avoided kind of talking about combat because I thought you're going to have a lot on your mind, but I also wanted to devote a whole video to this. Because D&D 5e is very much built around combat. It's very central to the game. Now, it is possible to have a minimal combat in your campaign, but so much about character creation and your character sheet is devoted to combat, as we're going to see today. I think if you wanted to have no combat, there are probably a lot of better systems out there than D&D 5e, including one that producer Jay got a hold of recently called Wonderhome, described as a pastoral fantasy tabletop role-playing game about traveling animal folk and the way they change with the seasons. Sounds pretty cool. Let us know in the comments below if you'd like us to do a video on it. Also, if you haven't already, I recommend you check out our video that we did on creating combat encounters, especially if you want a slightly more in-depth look at the kind of nitty-gritty of it. But today we're focusing on the very basics and the idea that you're just gonna go into it and be able to run some combat. So, returning to the scenario that we kind of came up with last week, where we said that a local lord's young daughter had been taken by bandits. Now, by this point, your players have decided that they want to go and investigate the area where her caravan was attacked. And after a bit of exploration where your players tell you what they want to do, for example, search for tracks or something like that, they stumble across a small campfire where 4 bandits are making camp for the night. Now, you may find that your players decide to come up with this really elaborate plan, which involves ropes, pulleys, the coming of the blood moon, all sorts. Now here, I'd give them time, but if you do feel like they're taking a little bit too long to come up with this plan, or they're kind of arguing loudly, I have a little trick that I do, which is I start rolling dice. And I don't say what's happening, I don't really explain it, but, you know, once one player or 2 players start realizing that you're rolling, this is kind of a signal that, oh no, they might be like hearing us or something like that. Now, to prepare for this combat, if you remember, last session we talked about grabbing a stat block out of the monster manual on page 343. Now here you may be tempted to grab 3 bandits and a bandit captain, but we're starting real kind of simple, and it's going to be something really easy just to get people kind of accustomed to what combat is. Now, you will also need some info from your PCs. Here, I would recommend a notebook that you can write notes into. I know it's very analog, but still, it's kind of the best way that I've found for keeping track of combat. There are lots of products out there that are supposed to help with keeping track of initiative and hit points and all these kinds of things. I've tried some of them. I haven't really got along with any in particular, so I just kind of get my notepad, my pen, and I'm going to explain to you how I do it. So, on a piece of paper, write your players' names in one column. Then in the next column, you want their armor class. And finally, in the third column, you want their hit points. Now, don't worry, you're not going to have to keep track of their hit points as well as the hit points of your bad guys. It's just good to know kind of how much damage you're doing when you're dealing damage. And we're going to see what I mean in a bit. Because one common pitfall in early low-level combat is the dreaded TPK, the total party kill. But remember, you know, your PCs can be captured if they all get knocked out. They don't necessarily have to die. And then there's a whole new encounter to work on, and a bit of a cliffhanger and some different kind of puzzle elements to deal with. And besides, the challenge rating on the bandits is 1/8, which is not super intimidating, but as you will also see, like, you know, you start rolling particularly well, or you get a crit, and suddenly, you know, people can start dropping like flies. Now, this brings up an important question that you, as a DM, kind of have to answer for yourself. And that is, do you roll behind the DM screen, or do you roll out in the open where all your players can see the result? Different people have different opinions on this thing, and, you know, the concept of fudging dice rolls is something that gets discussed on any, you know, forum or WhatsApp chat of people talking about D&D. Now, I usually roll behind the screen, but if I want to raise the tension, then I will roll out in the open. But again, it's all in the kind of service of the narrative. Bottom line is, it's up to you. Now, the moment comes where you get to utter another classic DM line. Roll for initiative. This is where you will ask your players to roll a d20 and add their dexterity modifier. So let's say our wizard, Jim, who we built last week, rolls first, and he happens to roll a 12. Now this plus his dex of +1 will give him a total of 13. And what I do is I grab my notebook, and in the middle of a page, I write Jim, and I write 13. Then with Jim's name there, Jim 13, I would ask for the other numbers from the other players. Anything under 13, I would put below that number and below his name. Anything over 13, I would put above. And that establishes your initiative order. When it comes to the bad guys, I tend to roll once for the sake of simplicity. You will learn that combat is a lot of fun, but it can drag, and so certain little kind of tips and tricks to speed things up can be really helpful. And remember that in World, a turn is 6 seconds. That's kind of important because some spells will give you a duration of 1 minute, for example. And to know that one turn is 6 seconds, then you know that 1 minute is 10 turns. Regular viewers will know that I really love playing with battle mats and minis. We've done a bunch of videos on this topic. I suggest you watch them. But for today, we're going to stick with Theatre of the Mind. The main reason why I like using minis and battle maps is because everyone is on the same page. I can describe something to you, but certain details you might assume different to me. And particularly with things like distance and movement, I think it tends to just be a little bit easier. So we have our initiative order, and now it's round 1. And our ranger, Leggy, is going to go first because although he rolled an 11, his +4 dex means that he goes all the way up to 15. Now, the player asks how far away the bandits are and if they have heard them. Here you could ask for a perception check to see if the ranger can see if they have heard them, or, you know, what the situation looks like. Skill checks I tend to keep to 1 or 2 a turn, and I don't really count them as actions unless it's something physical, like, for example, climbing. Or something that needs, like, an incredible amount of attention, like an investigation check, for example. And at this point, we should take a look at what kinds of things someone can do during their turn. So, you can move, perform an action and a bonus action, and you also have a reaction, which you probably won't use during your turn, but while someone else is acting. And here you can see all the different things that you can do, but don't worry, I have to look up half of them all the time. Going back to Leggy, though, he decides to pull out an arrow, take aim, and attack. Rolls a d20 and adds his attack bonus, which will be on the weapon profile on your character sheet. He rolls a 6, which is pretty terrible, but with his amazing +6 to hit, he gets a 12. And that is, if we check our stat block, the exact armor class of our bandits. Now, one trick that I always have to kind of remind myself, because I always forget, is meet it to beat it. So you have to get 12 or higher in order to do damage. So in this case, Leggy hits. With a damage for longbow, which once again is on the weapon profile of 1d8 +4 for Leggy. This time Leggy rolls fire and rolls an 8, making a total of 12. So for keeping track of hit points for the bad guys, what I do is I go back to my notebook And again, I might take a page and I write Bandit 1, Bandit 2, Bandit 3, Bandit 4. And then I write at the very top of the next column the total amount of hit points that they would all have. Now, if you've got different ones, you just write the hit points for Bandit 1, and then Bandit Captain, how many hit points, kobolds, whatever it might be. But the point is that I find it easier to count up than I do to subtract, at least quickly. So as they take damage, I would count in fives to reach the total, which in this case is 11 hit points. Which, you know, of course, at this level, it's not really that hard to keep track, but you will, as you go higher and higher, start having just hundreds of hit points and having to calculate, you know, how much a critical plus that minus that. It's stressful. So I always count up. Now, on this occasion, Leggy outright killed the bandit on his first attack. Nice. He decides to try and find some cover and uses his full movement to try and get behind a tree, but is just 10 feet short. Next up, it's the bad guys, having rolled 14 for initiative. Only 3 bandits left, but they all grab their crossbows and take aim at the blur that just shot an arrow and executed one of their comrades. Now again, with this idea of trying to keep things moving, I would roll all 3 attacks at the same time. So I'd roll all 3 d20s, they're all going at the same target, so you don't have to worry about, oh well, this one's going over there, that one's going over there. Rolling a 4, a 12, and an 18. Looking at our stat block, we add +3, and compare it to the notes that we made earlier about our character's armor class and hit points, and realize that Leggy's AC is 15. Meaning 2 of the shots hit. When bad guys deal damage, I always tend to use the average that is just after hit in the stat block. It just makes life easier rather than having to roll every time. In this case, dealing 5 points of damage for each hit for a total of 10. Now, looking back at Leggy's info that you took down, you realize that his total hit points is 11, so he's down to 1. You can see how easy it would be to kill a PC by accident, right? Next up, though, is our Dwarf Cleric Garn. And this is where any party would be really happy to have a cleric in their ranks. Because rather than attacking after seeing his friend take 2 bolts to the shoulder, he decides that he's going to cast a healing spell. In this case, he's going to cast Cure Wounds. It takes a full action, and he needs to get up to be able to touch Leggy in order to heal him. And this is where, you know, with the theatre of the mind, things can be a little bit more complicated. But you can also kind of hand wave some of this stuff away. Cure Wounds. A creature you touch heals 1d8 plus your spellcasting ability modifier hit points. Now, Garn rolls a 2, and his wisdom modifier is +3. But because he is a life cleric, he gets a little bonus, adding an extra 2 plus the spell level to the hit points that get healed, for a grand total of 8 hit points. Now, this brings Leggy back up to 9 hit points, so, you know, he's pretty grateful at this point. Jim rolls up his sleeves and the wizard casts Mage Armor, making his armor class 15 as opposed to 9, getting ready for the next turn when he's going to do some more stuff. Finally, for this round, it's Wolf's turn. He charges in with his glaive, screaming at the bandits, and attacks. Here, I recommend that you always ask your players to be descriptive when they say they're going to attack or cast a spell, because it's very easy to just get in this, okay, roll, hit, okay, roll, miss, roll, hit. It can get monotonous. So again, keep it spicy, keep it interesting by being very descriptive when the bad guys attack, and encouraging your players to be descriptive when they attack. Wolf attacks, rolling a 12 for a total of 17, decimating the armor class of the bandit in front of him. Damage roll is 5 plus 3 for a total of 8. And that brings us to the end of round 1. You go back to the top of initiative order and go again. Now, for example, if Wolf had actually killed a second bandit just with one swing, then I would have very seriously considered having the bandits run away, because they just saw two of their friends get absolutely obliterated by these people who came out of nowhere, so they're very likely to be scared. And it's always good to remember, not all creatures will fight to the death. A lot of them will run away, if not outright surrender. But that's also true for your players, so it's good both ways. But hopefully this walkthrough through a round of combat and the little tips and tricks that I've told you that I use, this will be a very helpful video for you or anyone who is looking to run a game for themselves. Before we jump into our character building section, please remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell icon to get notified and never miss a video. Okay then, so today I thought we would do something which happens to me quite often. I'm sure it's happened to a bunch of people, but you know, you start a campaign, you have a session or two, and someone is like, hey, I'd love to join you. So then you've got to make a new character and add them to the mix and hope that it doesn't change everything. But we're going to go for that today, and we're going to go a little bit wacky. So we're going to use our 5th edition character sheet creator, and there's some really kind of interesting races or lineages, I should say. For example, you know, the centaur, the bird folk. We've done a version of that, but I wanted to have a go at doing a tiefling bard, because why not? Now, for the lineage, I think I'm going to go Despater, and you're going to see why in a minute. It just all has to do with the bonuses that you get. And we're going to go with a kind of fun character, which I think is always pretty cool to have in a party, which is the Bard. Now, some people might even go as far to say as the Bard is the best spellcaster in the game. Maybe. And we're going to be a little bit of a cheeky kind of cockney gal kind of thing. And we're going to go with a criminal background. We're going to build kind of like the face of the party. So the person who's going to try to persuade people or deceive them, stuff like that. And reason being is that charisma is your spellcasting ability. And the reason we chose the Despater is because you get a +2 in charisma and a +1 in dex. So I'm going full 16 charisma, 15 dex. I'm going to go 12 constitution, 11 wisdom, 10 intelligence, and I'm dumping strength. Okay. Now, for skills, so again, we're, you know, kind of going to be the face of the team. So deception is definite. I'm going to go persuasion, performance, and why not intimidation? So again, we're going full on for the charisma skills, right? +1 con, so we don't have a lot of hit points at level 1. That's okay. We're going to go rapier. We're going to go entertainer's pack, a lute or any musical instrument. I kind of like the idea of like a harmonica. It's always been my dream to learn to play the harmonica. But I just, I never put in enough time. Alright, so, lineage of Despater Bard, level 1, criminal. And we're going to call her Sorsha. Something really cool and out there. And there we have it. We now have Sorsha the Bard joining the gang. We're going to give her some armor. I think we're going to give her some leather. Brings her AC up to 14. Pretty good stealth. Amazing charisma stuff. And, you know, expertise is going to come in really nice later on. Okay, so for the Bard, we get some spells. We get 2 cantrips and 2 first level spells. You can't not take Vicious Mockery. It is the best cantrip in the game, in my opinion, along with Mind Sliver. Then for your second cantrip, we already have Jim have Mage Hand. I think I'm going to go Minor Illusion. Again, we're tricky. We're going to be distracting people. I think that fits in well with what we're trying to build with Sorsha. Now, for first level, you could go Detect Magic, but we went with that with Jim, so we, it's good to coordinate, I think. Healing Word, very useful because it is a bonus action, unlike a full action. But, then are you stepping on the feet of the cleric a little bit? Maybe. I have always been a fan of Dissonant Whispers. So, Dissonant Whispers, it takes an action. It's a range of 60 feet. Just verbal components, so you can have your hands tied. There's no nothing else. You whisper a discordant melody that only one creature of your choice within range can hear, racking it with terrible pain. The target must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, it takes 3d6 psychic damage and must immediately use its reaction, if available, to move as far as its speed allows away from you. The creature doesn't move into obviously dangerous ground, such as a fire or a pit. On a successful save, the target takes half as much damage and doesn't have to move away. A deafened creature automatically succeeds on the save. Now, first of all, psychic damage, brilliant. And this is, if it succeeds, it still takes half damage. So, yes, definitely Dissonant Whispers. And for the other one, now here I'm a little bit more of the mind that something like Command would be useful, especially at this level, and it's just a pretty cool spell. So yeah, I'm going to go Command. And there we have it. We have Vicious Mockery, Minor Illusion, Dissonant Whispers, and Command. Our Tiefling has Dark Vision, Resistance, Fire Resistance, and you can cast some extra spells at higher levels as cantrips. So, for example, at 3rd level you get Disguise Self, 5th level Detect Thoughts. Pretty cool. Criminal feature, you know someone who can connect you with other criminals. And the Bardic feature, Inspiration, Bardic Inspiration. Inspire an ally within 60 feet, giving them a bonus 1d6 on one ability check, attack roll, or save, charisma modifier times per day. And our charisma is really good. It's 18, so we get 4 Bardic Inspiration dice. And as you go up in levels, the Bard definitely starts to get pretty cool. And, they're not terrible in a fight. Not great hit points, granted. But still, I think pretty good overall. Let us know what you think about Sorsha, the latest member of this little party that we're running through the beginnings of an imaginary campaign. Let us know down in the comments below. Thank you. There we have it, lovely people. The basics of combat and the little things that I've learned along the way in order to streamline and make combat the fun and exciting part of 5e that I think it's meant to be. Please let us know what you thought in the comments down below. And don't forget to share this with any friends who are starting to run a game for themselves. And finally, what tips would you give to me or anyone else watching to make combat the best it can possibly be? Drop them down below, and as always, keep slaying. If you've enjoyed this content, then please smash that like button, subscribe, share this around online, and come and visit our website, www.lavictoriaproductions.com, to see all our past episodes, as well as our blog posts and all the stuff that we're currently working on at La Victoria Productions. Why not reach out to us and tell us what you think of our videos? You can reach us on Twitter. @MouthLaVictoria is our producer. We are also on Instagram. I am Enano LVP, and our producer is Jazzy J. Shiro. We're also La Victoria Productions on Facebook and LinkedIn. Come on by and let us know what you think.